This is my first so here's my presentation of my storyboard that me and my dad worked on. I drew these pictures over here that is basically just a rough draft of a comic book. This first one represents Stanley being inside of a truck on his way to getting to Camp Green Lake. The second one represents Stanley and him teaching Zero how to do the alphabet, or how to read the alphabet. The third one is when the warden slaps Mr. Sir. The fourth one is when a kid makes fun of Mr. Sir's scar and he gets punched in the face. The fifth one is when Mr. Sir finds out that Stanley and Hector, or Zero, are digging a hole and found the treasure. The sixth one is when Mr. Sir and the warden are arrested. The seventh one is when and eighth one are both when Hector and Stanley both find their parents. The story is mainly about two kids, or like kids digging holes to find treasure. But the main story is just about a kid named Stanley misunderstood for shoes falling out and him getting misunderstood for a crime that he's not even into. So here's how it all starts. Stanley's walking home from school and a pair of shoes fall right into his hands. He goes to court. The court gives him two options: to either go to jail or go to Camp Green Lake, which is where the whole entire story begins. And once he goes to Camp Green Lake,
Next slide.
Oh. Once he goes to Camp Green Lake, he finds a kid named Zero. This kid named Zero is being called stupid almost all the time because he digs holes fast, like very fast, and this ties in later. But Stanley just walks in there. They call him Caveman. They give him nicknames, and he meets Zero. He asks him Stanley asks him a bunch of questions to get to know him. Then they become friends. Then they made a deal. If he taught him how to spell and he taught him the alphabet, he would dig his holes for him. So, like a couple weeks afterwards, Stanley and a bunch of his friends were digging holes, and one of his friends stole a sunflower seed bag. And Stanley took the hit for it, and then Mr. Sir caught him, and then he went to the warden's office. The warden asked Stanley if he did it. Stanley said no. She slapped him in the face with and she had some really poisonous nail polish on her fingernails, so when she slapped him, she gave him a really big wound. This next part is what happens when this child makes fun of his scar on his face and saying, well, where'd you get that scar from, and everything like that, and then he punches him because he doesn't know how to deal with his anger. This next part is on how Stanley and Zero have left the camp because Zero was sick and tired of being called stupid, and Stanley wanted to follow Zero. Zero and Stanley just went on a big mountain. They had food and a bunch of stuff. Then they just found out where the treasure was. They dug up the treasure, but Mr. Sir found them, and he called the warden. The next part is when the police come because they noticed that Zero wasn't even supposed to be inside the camp in the first place. Zero was also misunderstood so was Stanley. So everybody got arrested except for Zero and Stanley and the rest of the people who dug holes. Once they found the treasure, Stanley just went home, and Zero took some of the treasure so he can go hire private investigators to find his parents because he was a homeless child. That is the end of our presentation.
I hope that you liked it.
I like the movie a lot because I like the whole entire story because it gave me a brief understanding of like what poor kids go through and how labor and everything like that, like how people thought of how labor would get a kid not to do the things that they would do. Because my understanding, that's kind of what people do right now. That's what stories that they tell on TV, I guess. That's about it. Thank you for listening.
Okay.
Have a good day.